Hey everybody, welcome to Low Friction Friday and hope you're having a great week. Alright, as always, I do apologize in advance. This video will be a bit rushed, as will the next one if I can get to it. I was having a great week. We're actually off to New Zealand next week for a family holiday. I was going hard, trying to make sure I was on top of just stock coming in, business admin, chain preps for Andrew, race chain preps done and out, tests wrapped up so I could get to, say for instance, this detail review. All was going pretty well until my week kind of went like this. Yeah, on Wednesday, we discovered that somebody has hacked into my ATO account and has been lodging fraudulent tax returns. So they lodged a fraudulent Q4 BAS and end of financial year tax lodgement, redirected the bank account to them, put in a $44,000 return. Displaced my accountants as the ones that lodge my returns. Anyway, getting there after some hours, I have managed to re-establish that I am in fact me, but we still have a little bit to go. The call dropped out, unfortunately, which is very annoying, and I have to try to get back through to get through the fraudulent lodgement part. So yeah, apologies. It's been a bit of a run the last few weeks. On the plus side, the new PC is running magnificently, so we've picked up some speed on that front. Just could have done without the hacking this week. That would have been awesome. Alrighty, quick one. Yeah, thank you for a lot of great questions and comments on the video on the wax temperature removal. I just wanted to cover one quick thing before we actually get to this wax temperature testing upon return from a quick holiday. There were a number of comments in there where people are doing some quite fancy faffy things around how they hang their chain or what they do with their chain after removing it from the wax to ensure that there's an even distribution of the wax across all parts of the chain. Their concern being that if they were to just remove it and say hang it to set as what is normally recommended, that this could have more wax, drip down along the chain and leave more wax, say, on one side of a pin or roller and less wax on the other side of the pin or roller, and that this being not optimal. And I just wanted to, stress that, really just relax and re-wax and hang it to set and don't worry about all that faff. Even though there will be less wax on the other side of the pin and roller due to gravity, having more drip down, what is there is still more than what the chain needs. There will still be excess on those sides of the pin and rollers that will be pressed out during break-in, and after 10 minutes of riding, all parts of the chain are going to have the same very thin layer of wax remaining. There just really is at this stage zero evidence that gives you any benefit at all, and quite a good amount of evidence to say that there is going to be zero difference or zero impact. What I find, and this is just a curiosity aspect from me, is that I can't recall ever seeing this come up for people using drip waxes. So when somebody applies their drip wax, be it UFO or Silka or Squirt or Cracks or Smooth, these are a liquid, and they remain liquid quite a bit longer than the immersive wax that you remove from your wax pot, which will cool and set to a solid much more quickly, typically around 15 minutes. A number of liquid waxes will still be wet for some hours, and manufacturers are often requesting at least an 8-hour or 12-hour set time, so typically say an overnight. Never once have I seen somebody going, you know what, when I apply my liquid wax, what I need to do to ensure even wax distribution and that wax is not, due to gravity obviously dripping down, and I've got a lot more wax on the bottom of my pin and roller on the top span of the chain, and the opposite of that down the it's going to be the same, sorry, on the on the other side of the chain on the lower span. The faff gymnastics one would have to do with a liquid drip wax to ensure that wax is evenly distributed across all parts of the chain would be quite something, and not really possible or feasible. So it's just a strange thing that when somebody's applying their liquid wax, that they just apply it, work it in, wipe excess, and let it set, and don't worry about how it's dripping thanks to gravity. Yet with an immersive wax, which is going to set a lot faster, people are going through all sorts of faff, blow drying using racks and certain ways they put the chain and what they do with it to ensure that that wax is setting evenly distributed across the pins and rollers and so on. I don't get it at all at this stage, so I would just say just relax and re-wax, as is the mantra, and everything is going to be grand. Don't add all this extra faff and steps and stuff into your immersive waxing. It really is easy, as I've demonstrated numerous times before. And I'm just against people doing a whole bunch of extra things and potentially time and cost if there's not a proven benefit to do so. And there really, really isn't for any of that at this time. Quick apologies again. I noticed, there's still a lot of light flickering. I've been playing around with different camera settings. I haven't been able to get it to stop just yet. As best I can with the time today, I'll keep trying to muck around and see if we can solve this darn thing. But mostly, though, I'll try to keep it on screen record, showing lots of lovely, pretty data and graphs, as opposed to my silly face, which will be of benefit to everybody. Alrighty, here we go. So Dynamic have two immersive wax products available. One is Hyper, which is their Go Fast Wax, and Wander, which is their Ultimate Endurance Hot Wax. As always with the detailed reviews, we'll have a look at the marketing claims first and then see how the test results matched to those claims. So from the Dynamic website, Wander Wax is an extremely durable and super quiet hot wax for all weather conditions. Wander Wax is independently tested as the best wax on the market by Bike Magazine, which is a German publication. The unique biodegradable formula is highly dirt repellent and keeps your chain cassette and chainrings clean even during the dirtiest rides. The result is maximum durability for your entire drivetrain. So independently tested as best chain wax on the market by Bike Magazine, the Ultimate Endurance Hot Wax. Extremely long lasting, suitable for all weather conditions and terrains. Keeps your drivetrain clean and silent. The only biodegradable hot wax available. That one will be interesting to look at. Developed with UCI World Tour teams. One wax treatment lasts 800 to 1,000 kilometers. You can mix Hyper and Wander Wax together, giving you the best of both worlds. Stop worrying, start wondering. Instructions: melt Wander Wax in a wax heater between 75 and 85 degrees Celsius. Ensure the drivetrain and chain are fully degreased and dry. Submerge the chain in the wax for at least 15 minutes. Slowly remove the chain from the wax and let it cool completely. Break each chain link so it can move freely. Use a clean, dry microfiber cloth to remove excess wax from the chain. Remount the chain on the bike and you are ready to ride. Quick comments on that. So not many manufacturers give the tip of wiping the chain on the outside with a cloth. That does help remove some excess wax. It's just sitting on the outside that will cause more wax mess. So that is an advantage. It's a tip, especially for those using immersive wax chains on ergos or trainers, to get less snowflakes on the ground underneath. However, you will obviously over time be going through some cloths as you'll wax up your cloths. So I personally have never bothered with it because most of my breaking in is outdoors. I do use drip wax for indoors because I just don't need the contamination resistance of my immersive wax chain when I'm riding inside. Nothing wacky with their instructions so far, so that's all good. During the first ride, the wax needs some time to run in. A short 10-minute warm-up is plenty. After this, any excess wax will be pushed out of the chain and can leave flakes on the chainstay and drivetrain. These flakes will fall off when riding or can be removed with a clean and dry microfiber cloth. For cleaning between wax applications, run the chain through a clean, dry cloth. Use a clean and dry brush to remove wax residue from other drivetrain parts. That is all good. Reapply the wax when the chain sounds dry. By repeating the steps in the application above, the wax chain can be wiped clean and directly inserted in the liquid wax without further degreasing. Excellent. After 10 to 15 reapplications, the wax should be replaced to prevent contaminants from impacting drivetrain efficiency and wear. Wander Wax is the only biodegradable endurance hot wax. It provides a clean, buttery smooth and efficient drivetrain while offering ultimate and long-lasting wear protection. Suitable for road, gravel and MTB trail adventures in all weather conditions. by using an innovative wax blend with a completely new technology. I don't wonder if they expand on that, what that is. Wonder Wax is hydrophobic and will therefore keep your chain lubricated even in the wettest conditions. The formula is 100% PFAS-free, skin-safe, saves 6 to 12 watts and lasts 800 to 1,000 kilometers in optimal conditions. Wonder Wax is the perfect wax for gravel or MTB adventures, ultra-long road rides, or anyone who hates a dirty drivetrain. Right, just cover off a couple of points there. Again, like I think they're overall being quite accurate. There's nothing crazy going on with their claims. Obviously, the save 6 to 12 watts, that is not going to be versus other immersive wax competitors where any difference is going to be extremely small. That is going to be versus your typical wet lubricant chain, which, some are not bad, but some get pretty bad pretty quick. I am still a fan. I would love for manufacturers just by default to just provide some more information on those numbers. So where have they obtained that 6 to 12 watts? So what test, what products? I just want more verification of marketing claims in general rather than just throwing figures out there, which if they know it and they have it, just put it there. Even if it's a link, like just a nice hyperlink to say, here's the link to the test where we obtain this figure. Probably the one that I like to talk about a little bit in general is replacing the wax after 10 to 15 reapplications. For me, that's pretty soon, and they don't quantify that with the conditions that you're riding in. If you do 15 mud rides and don't do anything to clean your chain before you put it back in the wax pot, for sure, 10's probably a great time. If it's after 15 dry conditions roads riding, I mean, how much contamination has really penetrated your chain and the wax in dry road conditions? You're not bringing much into your pot. The wax in the pot is likely to be still most awesome, and you're just really throwing money away to replace it that quickly. So obviously it's a spectrum. What amount of contamination you bring into your wax pot each re-wax plays a pretty big part in how often you should. Obviously every re-wax brings a little bit in, and so over time your wax becomes less amazing and slightly more abrasive. But for a lot of people, that happens very slowly. So I normally have a typical recommendation for around sort of 30 re-waxes with M-Speed wax and hot melt, which for most is around 10,000 kilometers. And that is being, I think, quite conservative. A lot of people do go longer than that. And if they're typically riding in dry road conditions, there's not a negative impact. Obviously off-road, you want to stick more to the lower end of that. There are hints and tips for off-road, which I have all the information you'll ever need on my website, as well as what to do post proper wet rides to minimize the amount of crap that you're bringing into your pot. I tend to think that if a manufacturer is recommending a pretty early replacement or low number of reapplications for an immersive wax, which is your highest contamination resistant product category available, that, potentially it's because they're obviously wanting to turn over some sales of wax. If you release a product that is ultimately awesome and goes an extremely long time per application and can go for an extremely long time before you need to change it, to a point that can hurt the number of those batches of product that they may sell. Balancing that, of course, without me rambling too long, is we shouldn't be pushing our immersive wax in our pot to sort of silly lengths either. Once it does become, X amount abrasive, the amount of extra wear that will start to occur on your chain, cassette and chain rings, that cost will way offset the cost of just simply replacing your wax. So that will always be a false economy. So there's a balance. I would like to see manufacturers, I think we're sort of mature enough in this product category now that we could potentially have some recommendations on when you should replace based on that riding demographic. Frequent wet riding, especially if it's frequent wet off-road versus dry conditions versus dry road. I think we could just add a couple more lines and cover this off a bit better. But again, most do something like this. I would just like to see it be a little bit more specific. The claim that Wonder Wax is the only biodegradable endurance hot wax, that's really interesting. I won't have a chance to really confirm or deny some thoughts around that today. I do not know enough, or I guess certainty of knowledge enough around some other products to really be comfortable backing or contesting this claim. So the whole biodegradability of wax products is, I think, going to be a separate focus and episode in the future. Around the longevity, we will be covering that. I mean, this is the main test that we'll be doing today. This has not been single application longevity tested. The longevity of the treatment did come up as a bit of an issue in the extreme conditions block 6. However, all other blocks, longevity was certainly not an issue. So in dry conditions or less extreme wet conditions, whether or not this is a super long-lasting immersive wax versus some other competitor products, I don't know without doing the single application longevity testing. But we will see that it did come up as a bit of an issue in the extreme conditions. So it does have its limits compared to some of the other competitor products on the market. And we'll see the data for that shortly. If you're only writing in dry, it could go on and on and on again. We'd have to get that test done. In terms of it being buttery smooth and clean, absolutely no issue with the claims there. It does feel and sound very smooth, and it did remain very clean throughout the test. So that is all awesome. Let's zoom through the last bits. Sorry, just their FAQ or questions. Why are Dynamic, Hyper, and Wonder Wax the best waxes in the world? Our waxes were independently and extensively tested by a renowned bike magazine, a German authority in the field of cycling, bike care, and performance. Wonder was number 1 and Hyper number 2 in their test compared to 14 other top brand waxes. They had the lowest friction levels at different levels of power output. Our hot waxes are being used and loved by some of the best UCI World Tour teams such as Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and Alpecin de Koenig. Again, I don't want to get in the weeds on the test, but obviously those results, so they are a bit contested. There were some concerns raised. One was around temperature control with, it appeared after one manufacturer had a meeting with them that all of the fastest results were in the afternoon versus the morning. Some results were a bit interesting in terms of, say, Molten Speed Wax had the exact same loss result at 680 watts power as the 340 watts power, which is impossible. And Hyper being their fastest wax, it is odd that that was behind their endurance wax when the entire goal of Hyper is to be the fastest wax. As always, outright efficiency testing does remain, I guess, a little messy and contested. However, they're not lying. They did come number 1 and 2 in that test. Okay, can I mix Hyper and Wonder? Yes, we covered that. What is the difference between Hyper and Wonder? So Hyper hot wax is engineered with one goal to go as fast as possible. This means that the wax is slightly softer than Wonder wax, resulting in extremely low friction. It can, however, attract a little more dirt than Wonder wax, which is why Hyper is best suited to rides where speed is the only goal and every second counts. For rides where endurance is more important, I'm not sure what that word's meant to be, dirt adhesion needs to be minimal. Wonder Wax is your best option. It is a little harder than Hyper and therefore attracts less dirt and will last longer on a single application interval. Can I combine hot wax with dynamic drip waxes? Yes, you can use dynamic speed potion wax and slick wax if you need to reapply wax quickly between 2 hot wax sessions. Of course, we do recommend reapplying hot wax when you can, as it is the best method to achieve maximum performance from Hyper and Wonder. Why are Hyper and Wonder wax better than paraffin waxes? Hyper and Wonder wax use a unique wax blend that not only results in extremely high performance, but also in a fully biodegradable formula. Regular paraffin with or without additives is a low-cost alternative to the wax blend we use, but it is a petrochemical byproduct that is not biodegradable. So that, yes, comes back to that initial claim I was sort of questioning. They are correct, yeah. Paraffin, by definition, is not biodegradable, so it doesn't, I guess, break down to smaller molecules than a paraffin molecule really in the environment. There's a broader discussion there around, is that necessarily bad? If, for instance, food-grade paraffin that is used by the top wax blends, it's not that cheap because it's got to be very well refined. Cheap paraffin is obviously just, it's quite cheap. It doesn't go through those processes, has a high oil content, can have a whole bunch of other impurities as well. But really high quality food grade paraffin, which is mostly used by the top waxers, yeah, it is not super cheap, and it's quite safe. It's food grade, so you could literally eat it. So if that doesn't break down in the environment, sort of smaller than a paraffin molecule, I'm not sure how much of an issue that really is. But again, that whole aspect is worth a full investigation and episode of its own. Other things that can be highly biodegradable aren't super healthy to be around, like, I don't know, plutonium. So, yeah, there's differences around this whole biodegradable area. It is also less efficient at sustained higher outputs, as the lubricating layer can break away from the chain, resulting in metal-on-metal friction. Again, I would say that the manufacturers of the other waxes would contest that, and many of them will have quite a number of Olympic gold medals, world record medals, world level wins in Tour de France stages, and so on, to sort of back that their wax blend goes quite well at the top pro levels. And a lot of that also includes on track, so I really am not sure how many of the Olympic gold medals, world records, and so on track have not been on wax in the last 10 years, and these are paraffin wax based by the top manufacturers that we know. So yeah, we'll just call that one again quite contested. And I think that if they have some information on this or evidence of this from some actual objective testing, then I'd like to see that supported. How many bars of wax should you fill in the waxifier? Waxifier. I have never seen that word before in my life, despite being in this space for a while. That's a ripper. They must sell, instead of a wax pot, something with a much more fun name that I really, really like. Right, with 3 bars of Hyper or Wonder Wax, how many grams of wax do you use per waxing session? Yes, approximately 4 grams for a chain with 120 links. That sounds accurate to me. How long does the wax last in the toughest off-road conditions? Off-road, mountain bike or gravel, in the toughest conditions, the wax will last 500 kilometers. I don't think they can possibly say that. Dust is very different. So you can be riding hard pack with very low dust. You can be riding a lot in the forest where you've got soft soil dust, or you can be out in Arizona where you've got crushed rock dust, or at Eagle Mountain Park across the road from me, and that abrades through the wax or any lubricant extremely quickly. I'm not a fan of a generality like that, because I can assure you it would not last 500 kilometers across the road from me, nor in Arizona. Has Wonder Wax been independently tested? Yes. Fun. Oh yeah, there it is. It's a waxifier set. Why have I not been using the word waxifier before? That is awesome. I'm going to have to change my ways. Looks like they have a pot set very similar to Silka and Cyclo Wax, and without having actually got hold of one, I still think Optimized Bike's hanger takes the cake at the moment. This one has 3 notches to hang 3 different chains. That looks groovy. They look pretty close together. It would be interesting if the chains ended up sticking to each other using that hanger. A lot of hangers as well, potentially theirs is longer, but something we certainly comes up as a bit of feedback with both the Silka pot and the Cyclo Wax hangers is that they are a little short, and so for a lot of chain lengths, especially off-road like gravel, mountain bike, where you can be running longer chains than road, it is really easy to have the length still droop down all the way into the wax when you're hanging them up. I've got a block of wood that sits on top of my hanger so that it lifts the chain up higher, but yeah, maybe this one's taller. I would like to see some of these in general just ensure they are high enough that even if you're rocking quite a long chain for a high pulley mountain bike or e-bike, that it won't drip back into or hang back into the wax pot, because that's just not optimal. Alrighty, here we go. Since I have a working computer and can actually click on the cells I need to click on and stuff without waiting half a minute every time for it to do so, I was able to improve the data presentation rather than the clunky data table, which still exists. It's still there. That will always be there. But we can make things look a bit nicer for the run through. All right, understanding the graph. So basically, initially we'll go through block by block. Each block result, or each block's test, is 1,000 kilometers long. For the graphs, I have multiplied the wear rate attained in that 1,000 kilometers by 5 so that we get a more relatable 5,000 kilometers of cycling using the wear rate attained from that particular test block. It just helps delineate things better. And the graph will explain if it's a clean or no contamination, so there's nothing being, sort of wear acceleration for it to have to resist in that test block, or if it is a dry contamination or wet contamination or extreme contamination test block, and so on. As always, further information is found on the actual data sheets. Okay, understanding the graph, the pink columns will always be the immersive waxes, the green will always be wax drip, the blue always be wet lubricants or wet drip, and orange is for all lubricants tested put together. Yellow is for the lubricant on test. So, zooming into the numbers, we're looking at basically 1.0 being one chain worn to the recommended replacement mark of 0.5% elongation wear. That's cut off. Anyway, so for instance, 0.65, if I look at that for the average for all wax drips tested to date in block 1, multiplied by 5 out to relate it to 5,000 kilometers, that means that we have, at the wear rate attained from block 1, putting that across 5,000 kilometers, at the end of that time, we would have worn through basically 0.65 of a chain, or 65% of a chain. Okay, let's hope that all made sense. So we can see that the average of all immersive waxes tested, which is really the main comparison will be for Dynamics Wonder Wax, that is 0.15, and for Dynamic Wonder, that is 0.35. That is a bit high for block 1. It is, in all honesty, oddly high for an immersive wax. I don't really have anything that jumped out at me as to what would be behind that higher than expected result. It's lower than wax strips. Some wax strips do have some initial penetration issues, so wax strips can actually be worse in block 1 versus block 2 when we start adding contamination. If we just jump across to the next little section, if we compare it to the top 5 tested in each category, so the top 5 immersive waxes ever tested actually have an average wear rate of 0. There's no detectable wear across any of the top 5. It's a little bit higher than the top 5 wax drips ever tested, which is not where an immersive wax really wants to be. And some wet lubricants can do really well in block 1. They can be extremely lubricious and protect chains from wear. Block 1 is wet lubricants' time to shine. So it's higher than those as well. Compared to the worst products, or the worst 5 in each category, it is equal to the average of the worst 5 immersive wax lubricants tested to date, but it's well under the average of the worst 5 wax strips and worst 5 wet lubricants. Overall, it's not bad, but it's definitely not the result we want to see from an immersive wax. Moving on to block 2. This is where we add 5 grams of sand at 7 specific points, and it is also re-waxed at 7 specific points throughout that 1,000 kilometer test result. And again, though, the wear result attained for block 2 is multiplied by 5 to extrapolate over 5,000 kilometers. We can see that it actually did a little bit better. So it had slightly lower wear in block 2 than block 1, which is interesting, and I don't know if I've actually seen that before for an immersive wax. So it's a little bit of a puzzle at this stage. At 0.27, it is slightly better than the average of all immersive waxes tested. It is better than the average of all wax drips tested to date, well under wet lubricants, which really start to fall apart once contamination comes into play, and obviously well under all lubricant average. It is still notably behind the top 5 wax strips ever tested, which recorded almost no wear, so that extrapolated out to 0.05 only. And Wanda is at 0.27. It is under the average for the best 5 wax drips tested to date, so it's still being an immersive wax. It's coming out on top there, and obviously well under the top 5 wet drips tested to date. And really, versus the worst 5, it's well ahead. So the worst in category products, especially with wet drips, you do not want to be using those off-road. Zooming to block 3, which is no contamination again. It gives lubricants a chance to clear any contamination they gathered during block 2, the whole clean as it lubes kind of thing. It's better again, 0.09, so it's almost nowhere in block 3. So it continues to be an interesting test result for this one that is slightly under the average of all immersive waxes tested to date. However, if we duck across to the next section, we can see that the top 5 immersive waxes recorded 0 wear in block 3 as an average, so it's still just slightly behind the top 5 immersive waxes tested, but better than the worst 5, which is at 0.4, which is relatively high. So it's doing fairly well by the time we get to block 3. Block 4, wet contamination. So it's basically the same as block 2 in terms of the contamination addition points and the contamination type. Just we also now have 500 ml of water involved as well. And this is where things didn't go so well. So slightly higher than the average of all immersive waxes tested. But the main thing is it is well behind the top 5 immersive waxes tested. So the average for the top 5 is 0.4 and dynamic is Wanda is at 1.5. So it's nearly 4 times the wear versus the top 5 immersive waxes tested to date, which is a big gap. And it's it's almost as high as the top 5 wax drips, which I mean it really should be well ahead, because every time you re-wax you do a flush clean, which wax drips do not get that luxury. So that's 1.5 is a surprisingly high result, to say the least. It's better than the average 5 of the worst tested, but yeah, really wet conditions was not this one's strong point, and that was an area fairly boasted about by Dynamic. So we do have a pretty strong misalignment there in the test result here versus the marketing. Right, block 5 goes back to no contamination again. Gives lubricants a chance to try to clear all the crap that they picked up during block 4. We can see that it reset pretty well compared to, I guess, the average. It's a little bit higher at 0.32 versus the average for all immersive waxes at 0.25. But it's a lot better than the block 4 result. So, I mean, it resets okay. We can see that it is notably higher than the average of the top 5 waxes tested at 0.05 versus Dynamic Wanda's 0.32 wear rate. So it is a higher wear rate in block 5, again, really than what we would like it to be. So it's not resetting as perfectly on re-wax versus its competitors or top competitors. But it's a lot lower than the result during block 4. And considering it's re-waxed 7 times in block 4, which means it gets 7 contamination resets really in block 4, it's kind of showing that it's just not holding up as well during the actual interval runs as what we would like. I'll try to fix this for an upload. I don't know why the information in the title's cutting off. Anyway, I'll fix that. So yeah, it's surprisingly a bit higher than where we want it to be in block 5. Hasn't reset post wet contamination block 4. Unlike in say block 3, it reset very well after dry contamination block 2. And the harshest block, so block 6, the extreme contamination result, we kind of saw a similar trend, and this was also audible. So basically double the amount of water and contamination is added, and it's added twice as often versus the block 4 test block. And yeah, towards the end of each test interval after the second addition of the higher amount of water and contamination, it would be dry and squeaking. So all of the wax really has been abraded off by that point. So it would hold up for about 2/3 of each test interval, and then it would be given out by the end. And that's likely what's been behind the quite high wear rate in this test block. So it's notably higher than the average for all immersive waxes tested. Way behind really the top 5 immersive waxes tested to date. Just really didn't hang on. Even the top 5 wax drips are sort of outdoing it here, which should not happen. And even the top 5 wets are uncomfortably close. So And it's higher even than the average of the 5 worst immersive waxes tested to date. So it did really struggle in test block 6, and that was sort of audibly apparent as well. And it was then not too much of a surprise at the end of block wear rate check. All right, leaving us with the final result. So remember that last result we're showing 2.59. That is the block 6 wear rate times by 5 for 5,000 kilometers of cycling in those extreme conditions. This is the full result, so it includes that 1,000 kilometer extreme conditions test block, but it is in amongst block 1, no contamination, block 2, dry contamination, block 3, no contamination, block 4, wet contamination, block 5, no contamination, and finally, obviously, block 6, extreme contamination. All of those blocks, 1,000 kilometer actual wear rate results added up together for this is the actual full amount of wear on the chain at the end of the 6,000 kilometer main test, including all that fun. We have dynamic wander at having worn 1.02, so basically it is worn through the chain to its wear rate allowance by the end of the 6,000 kilometers. So overall, it's still, a low wear result versus many other options. It is a little bit higher than the average for all immersive waxes tested to date at 0.8. It is sort of 2.5 times higher than the average of the top 5 immersive waxes tested to date, and very similar to the top 5 wax drips that have been tested. Still well ahead of the top 5 wet lubricants tested to date, and it's nicely ahead of the average of the worst 5 wax drips tested, as well as the worst 5 wax drips. And again, well, the worst wet lubricants tested to date are some drivetrain eating lubricants, if we can call them that indeed. Having a look at it outright ranking on the data table, things don't overall go, I guess, as great there. Sorting by block 6, so the end of the full 6,000 kilometers of testing, it is in 15th place overall out of 58 lubricants tested to date, but in its own category, it's actually in 12th place out of 13 immersive waxes tested. So it for sure would want to rank higher, and we can see that we have a couple of wax drips that have beaten it through to the end of test, which, considering that they don't get a reset like immersive waxes do each rewax, really I would have expected dynamic wander to want to be hanging around up here somewhere, not here. All right, so we can see this how the Wander Wax looks new. Don't worry about the staining on the bottom of the pot, that has never come off. The wax looks quite clear. Chain is having a lovely bath. From what I've seen, they're fairly, well, it hasn't jumped out at me what wax blend this might be comprised of. We know it's not paraffin, but what it actually is at this stage, I don't really know. By the end of the test, the wax looks quite different. It does go, sort of dirty fairly quickly once you start re-waxing your chain. It's not. Don't be too alarmed if you're using it and you find that after the first couple of re-waxings from dry road conditions, it's already gone black. There is an interaction between the chain metal and the coatings on the metal, and no matter what lubricant you are running, no matter what, your lubricant will go black. Be it a clear wax that you're using, be it a clear lubricant or a colored lubricant, every single lubricant running on a chain, even in perfectly clean conditions, will very quickly go black just from the interaction. And so, don't think that just because your wax has gone black really quickly that it is now abrasive and you need to change it. That's not the case. This will have become more abrasive because obviously it's been hit with a whole lot of crap during the test. But just to show you, things do look different from start to finish. Actually, on the drivetrain and on the chain, it does in fact remain impressively clean. This is at the end of the test, so this is at the end of the final interval of 6,000 kilometers of testing, with the final block it being hit with a whole bunch of water and crap. And we can see the chain still visually looks very clean. It looks great. I mean, we've got a little bit of contamination stuck on the outside, but the actual chain itself is not a black mess. There's no big build-up of wax on the plates or on the teeth. It does stay visually and drivetrain-wise very clean. There is more build-up by the end of the test on the cassette cogs, but that's to be expected. Again, there's no cleaning during the test. It's potentially a little bit more than with some others, but nothing that I would be too concerned about. You would be able to maintain that pretty easily with a very stiff brush. The immersive waxes do brush off if you do that every now and then if you need to. Some you don't really need to at all, but yeah, that's how she looks there. Also see on the pulley that there hasn't been really any build-up on the pulleys, which is typically the first place that some waxes will start to build. So there's, more on the cassette really than on the pulley wheels, which is a bit interesting. Pricing wise, it's expensive, so looks competitive-ish at the start at $64.99 Australian, but that's only for 240 grams. So compared to, say, M-Speed Wax or Silka Hot Melt, you're going to be paying less than that for 500 grams or 520 grams in M-Speed Wax's case. So I had to get 2 packs, so to make the normal basically 500 grams, so it's 20 grams short of the normal test amount. So we'll factor that a little bit in the results, but really that wouldn't have made any tangible difference. But to say get 480 grams or equivalent to 2 pucks of M-Speed Wax or 1 bag of Silka Hot Melt, then you're going to be spending basically around $130. So it is quite expensive. Just on that, so I just realized I made a little oversight in my, sort of towards the start of this review, where I was saying that the 10 to 15 was perhaps a bit overly frequent. Completely forgot at that time that it was only 240 grams per pack. So normally when we're recommending to replace your M-Speed Wax or Hot Melt at somewhere around 30 re-waxes depending on your riding. It is a bit more in line with that because it is only half the wax amount. We're talking about the full 500 grams for Hot Melt or M-Speed Wax. But just, remember that you're basically paying twice the price. So after all that, top takeaways and wrap it up. All right, as we just covered, it's expensive. If something is notably more expensive, like double versus some of its key competitors, it really needs to be notably better than it, in my opinion. And the test results here showed that, unfortunately, it was not matching, especially the top 5 immersive waxes that we've tested to date. So the cost premium hasn't come through with class-leading results. Unfortunately, really, it's behind where it really wants to be. So that's not amazing. Most notably, it fell away versus its key competitors in the wet conditions. So both Block 4 and Block 6, there was a notably bigger gap versus where it wants to be. So it just simply didn't hold up in protecting the chain from wear once water and contamination was involved, compared to the top 5 immersive waxes tested to date, most of which are at least around half the price of this product. They may wish to contest, and they can certainly do so. Any questions, concerns, feedback, pushback that they have, would love for them to zoom that through, and I can cover that verbatim and sort of cover any of the other side. Just a quick note without rambling on too much. Remember that yes, they're number 1 and 2 in the bike magazine outright efficiency testing, but simply outright efficiency testing remains to this day a basket case of being contested by other facilities versus whichever facility is publishing their results, because obviously they are out of alignment with, say, Ceramic Speed's Denmark Research Lab testing. It's out of alignment with Silka's fancy Purdue Lab testing. We've seen some wonky stuff from, say, Wheel Energy in the past, and it's just, Surf Tech that did some testing for Allied. Like, outright efficiency testing results are just all over the place, and certainly there were some, say, concerns that all ducks were in a row for the results with Bike Magazine. Just simple ones, for instance, being that M-Speed Wax result. The same loss at 680 watts versus 340. It's just not possible. Things like that. You don't want any red flags, and let's just say that their results are contested by others already. My test, it is blunt. So the wear rate correlation, it is a blunt correlation, but it is also, especially over 6,000 kilometers of testing, it's a very robust test comparing one lubricant to another based on that wear rate. We're not saying whether one is more efficient than another. We are simply looking at, did this product protect the chain from wear over that time and that contamination and water exposure versus other immersive wax products, and then we can obviously draw some performance information from that. If a lubricant does not protect a chain from wear versus its key competitors, especially if there is a notable wear rate difference, like potentially double or more, that's twice as much hardened steel that has been worn off the chain versus competitors, it flat out takes friction to do so. It has simply not protected the metal parts from that wear as well. And it's become clear where that was occurring really in this test. There was a bit of a gap in the initial blocks, but the raw numbers or the raw amount of wear in those initial test blocks was quite small. That increased a lot once water plus contamination was involved. So the main takeaway is, I did like the cleanliness of it. I did like the buttery smoothness of it. The wear rates initially were higher than we would hoped, but not too alarming. Really more of a concern about how it goes once water plus contamination is involved, and then factoring that sort of performance gap versus its key competitors. We have an expensive price tag, which makes it hard to recommend that you get this versus other better tested, cheaper wax products that are just really got a lot to stand behind that they are a top immersive wax to go with. Covering the main claims that this is an ultra endurance wax. It may well be in dry conditions, so certainly through the dry test blocks there were zero indications that the treatment lifespan was having any issues at all getting to the interval lengths on this the ZSC test protocol. Without doing the single application longevity testing, I do not know how long it would go in dry conditions versus its key competitors in that SAL testing. But for sure, it did struggle in wet conditions. It was notably done, especially in the last third of the extreme contamination block intervals where the chain was squeaking, showing that there was really no wax left, and that other immersive waxes that have recorded a very impressively low wear rate through extreme contamination block 6 have still been sounding and running fine at the end of those intervals. So definitely not holding up in the wet like it really wants to be. So potentially ultra endurance in dry, but definitely not so based on my testing here in wet conditions. Final one I'll probably speak on because I've gone as usual way too long. They're making claims saying their wax blend is a superior wax versus using highly refined paraffin as a base because paraffin can break down at high loads. Back that, please. What loads? 4,000 watts, 2,000 watts, 1,400 watts. What length of time? What are we talking about here? I really want manufacturers to be getting more specific with the claims that they're making and backing them. Just link to the test and the data that sits behind that claim that you're making to say, hey, our products here, our paraffin-based competitor products are here, and here's what we've got to sit behind that. Because they don't have that. That goes against a huge amount of other testing and information we have for the top paraffin-based wax products, and it certainly didn't hold up against those products in the ZSC test here. So definitely, I guess the ball's now in Dynamics court. For sure, come back with, saying why my test results are wrong and why their product's better, and what have they got to substantiate that. And please provide the testing that sits behind that. All right, final observation. It does feel a little bit more sticky and tacky to the touch versus the likes of M-Speed Wax or Silka or Rex, especially, which feel very dry if you have done your chain prep correctly. It's just a personal thing. I personally don't like a sticky or tacky wax feel for an immersive wax. If you have that if you're using M-Speed Wax or Silka and you've got a sticky or tacky wax after you've cleaned it and waxed it, that's normally an indication you've done something wrong and you've had sort of factory grease still playing part of things. So it's always been something that I just, it's like, if that happens with an immersive wax, what have I done wrong? With some of the newer, and different immersive wax products on the market like this, that is just their properties, and it's not a sign that you've stuffed up the prep. So just take note of that. It didn't play a negative role in terms of its cleanliness. So we could see at the end there, especially on the chain rings and the chain, very clean by the end of the full test. And it definitely didn't play any part in, say, what was happening in block 2 with the dry contamination results, which were actually less than the wear rate result for block 1. So it's not gathering more contamination or transporting it in the chain. It's just the property of that wax. It does feel that little bit sticky and tacky. So it's just how it is, and take note that you haven't stuffed up if that's what you've got post-prep. Right, that'll do. Let me know your thoughts and comments, and if you've been using this product, how you've been finding it. Would love to know. And fingers crossed, I will maybe have time to get the Silca Electrico Micro Electric Mini Pump end of life review and teardown done. No promises, but I will do my best.